dedicated to each and every one of you who appreciate a great glass of wine. You know what I mean?
It's Monday. Let's raise a glass to the beginning of another week. It's time to unscrew, uncork, or saber a bottle. And let's begin exploring the wine glass. I hope you enjoyed last week's episode. Today we continue with the education about the grapes and regions of Abruzzo. Thanks to the Wine Scholar Guild for holding these seminars. It is a wonderful way to dive into specific wine regions and increase our desire to explore more. While you're listening, it would be greatly appreciated if you could take 1 minute to subscribe, rate, and review. It really only takes a few seconds of your time, but means so much to the show. Also, be sure to check the box for automatic downloads so that new episodes of Exploring the Wine Glass show up in your next up feed. Next best way to support Exploring the Wine Glass is to tell your friends. If you enjoy the podcast, your wine-loving friends will too. Follow me on all the socials, and finally, don't forget to head to the website exploringthewineglass.com to read the blog, sign up for the newsletter, and keep up with all the happenings. Sláinte!
Hey everybody, I'm Lori Budd, a UC Davis winemaking program, Spanish wine scholar, sommelier service, champagne and Côte d'Aron specialist, and a WSET Level 2 graduate. You can find Exploring the Wine Glass on all the socials, as well as your favorite podcast catchers. If you haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to swipe, subscribe, rate, and review. Stay in the know about all things wine by visiting my website, exploringthewineglass.com. I promise I'll never tell you what to drink, but I'll always share what's in my glass.
You are special.
Hey everybody, I want to introduce you to the Wine Tasting Club card. This club entitles members to receive half off wine tasting flights at 100 plus partner wineries, vineyards, and tasting rooms for an entire year. Choose from the VIP e-card plastic wallet that is embossed with your or your gift recipient's name, or you can choose to download a VIP e-card mobile app to your phone. This month's special price is only $29 for a 1-year membership. Take time to order the Wine Tasting Club cards online today and save $5 with promo code WINE5. That's WINE, the number 5. Visit their website, www.winetastingclubcard.com, to order your card today.
Very, very special. You are so special.
Okay, so we're going to start by looking at Trebbiano d'Abruzzo, DOC. So we have here sort of dating back to about the 16th century. All right, when we have this first mention of the grape variety, and it is this sort of medium to late harvest grape, meaning that it's not an early ripener. You need to leave it on the vine a little bit longer. And particularly when you do, then you tend to get a little more complexity out of these wines, okay? In terms of the wines, they tend to have fairly generous acidity. They can be quite light and delicate, but if you pay attention in those top examples, they will have complexity. A lot of producers now are using the lees aging, some barrel maturation to just give it a little more texture. And if you think back to that map, this DOC covers the same area as our Montepulciano DOC. Okay. And it is a blend. Okay. Can be a blend. So you have two grape varieties that play the dominant roles. You have Trebbiano Abruzzese and then Trebbiano Toscano. Okay. Some people would argue they are the same thing, but there are differences between them. And Trebbiano Abruzzese tends to just give you a little more complexity, a little more body, a little more richness to the wines, okay? These two are blended with the help of other white grape varieties, so that's where you might see some of the Malvasia. The Malvasia could be Biancalunga or Malvasia di Candia. Generally, seeing those blended in with the Trebbianos. So a significant amount of Trebbiano d'Abruzzo DOC white being produced. Okay, so what do these wines kind of taste like? Here we're looking at a bouquet with these kind of nice flowery, fruity notes to it. Not particularly distinctive in terms of like one particular fruit or flavor. Color, beautiful straw color. So we have where are you finding these? Kind of not exceeding that 500 meters above sea level. However, that's sort of general. And then if you do have a little higher elevation, it's generally because you are seeing vineyards that are exposed to the south. So having a little more warmth there that allows them to be planted at slightly higher elevation there. And what is the sort of allure of these wines? For me, it is that really kind of refreshing, crisp sort of quality to them. They're not intense. They're easy drinking wines. That being said, there are some producers that do make spectacular versions of these wines, and you will find some producers such as Valentini, let's say, that you could definitely age these wines for a significant amount of time. Okay, so what about Cerasuolo d'Abruzzo DOC? So here we have this rosé style wine. The appellation was created in 2010s for Rosato, okay, which is what we would call rosé wines in Italian, and made from the Montepulciano grape. When we learn a little bit more about Montepulciano, you will see that as a grape variety, it is very blessed with anthocyanins, so meaning that it has a lot of color in its skins. So when you make a rosato with it, you need very, very brief skin contact to give you this beautiful, intense color. Lots of fruit. For me, it's very much about cherry kind of notes on the nose, some almond, that sort of thing. And it's a beautiful dry rosé. You have a little bit of structure from those Montepulciano tannins, but to me, that just makes it something that's beautiful with food. As I mentioned, that sort of almondy aftertaste, that cherry, sometimes depending on how they're made, you get a little that sort of carbonic maceration note. So you can see that little picture of the banana there. So kind of fruity esters there, but lots of cherry flavor as well. Similar altitudes as we saw before. Always think of these as being dry. Okay, if you taste something that has some sweetness, it is definitely the anomaly. They are generally quite dry and soft in terms of tannins, but with a nice little bit of body to them too because of the Montepulciano grape. All right, let's talk about Pecorino, because this is definitely maybe one of the things that have the grape varieties that have really sort of brought Abruzzo back to people's minds in recent times. Okay, so this appellation was this Abruzzo DOC. It was created to protect and to promote these autochthonous or indigenous varieties such as Pecorino, the Passerina, the Cocciolo, and the Montonico. And these sort of the territory of origin of these wines has been sort of identified, and they have really worked on defining what is sort of typical for these varieties when they're made into wines, and have really tried to start and raise the level of quality, the sort of average level of quality that you're going to see from these wines. And it is something that they're really trying to promote because it's something that's unique about them. Particularly, you do see the Pecorino and the Passerina in Marche, but you don't see the Cocciolo and the Montonico much elsewhere. So something that makes them very unique, and I think something that more lovers of white wine should be checking out because they are very interesting wines. So what about Pecorino? Talk a little bit about this interesting grape variety. So it was a variety that was almost extinct. Okay. It is thought to be native to the Toronto River area in Maracay, but down in that southwestern corner of Maracay, so you can see very, very close to modern day Abruzzo. It was very widely planted until the 19th century. And then it was kind of lost ground during the 20th century because it wasn't particularly high yielding. Okay. And so plantings kind of fell off, and then it sort of was almost forgotten about. It was literally almost brought back to life in the early 1980s by one producer, Grifoni, who he had found an old vineyard with some ungrafted pecorino. And he took some of the cuttings, he planted them in his vineyard, and he released the first varietal pecorino from there in 1990. And producers in Maracay and Abruzzo, saw what kind of wines this variety made, and took note and started planting more vineyards of pecorino. And since the early about 2000s, the plantings have been increasing, and today it's quite widely cultivated throughout Marche and Abruzzo. It does perform quite well at high altitude, so that is something that makes it well suited to Abruzzo. And high sugar levels, just a great little wine that has some versatility. Okay, a little more citrusy, tropical, a little more character than maybe your Trebbiano wines. Likes those high altitude, and quite minerally on the finish. Maybe one of the interesting things is about the name. We're not 100% sure, but probably connected to the transumanza, so that's heritage of moving sheep from one area to the other during the different seasons, probably linked somehow to that, because pecorino is also sheep. Okay, we have this area of Villamagna, DOC, a very small little region in the province of Chieti, giving rise. We're seeing more and more of these well-structured Montepulciano wines coming from this region. So something to look for. There's not a lot of producers yet, but something to put on your radar. And then, of course, probably the most popular, the Montepulciano d'Abruzzo, and a lot of hectares devoted to this variety and this appellation. A long history of these wines, probably somehow trying to pay homage to the wines of Vino Nobile di Montepulciano. And so those wines were very highly regarded, and it is thought that maybe they decided to call the red wine of Abruzzo Montepulciano in recognition of these high quality wines from the Montepulciano area in Tuscany. That's caused a lot of confusion ever since, but it is its own great variety, okay, and capable of making its own very high quality wines. You have these medium kind of compact clusters. As I mentioned, lots of anthocyanins in there. Now we have a reserva category here that you can see has to be aged for 2 years in oak barrel for at least 9 months within that area of production, and minimum alcohol levels. And then since 2006, they have been adding some sub-denominations within there. So you can see within the province of Pescara, you have these 2 particular sub-denominations. And then in 2010, they added a sub-denomination for the Chieti province, and then 2 provinces or sub-denominations for the province of L'Aquila. So trying again to kind of focus in on individual expressions of Montepulciano from various terroir. This map, is kind of overlapping there. So again, our little kind of map showing those sottozona here within the bigger region. And then with Montepulciano d'Abruzzo, in terms of what those wines taste like, lots of black and red fruit. They can sometimes have this very sort of tarry, kind of meaty edge to them, dark in color. Okay. elevation, again, kind of liking that same band of elevation, full-bodied, robust, elegant, aromatic wines with potential for aging for sure. Just a quick couple things about Montepulciano. We will talk a little bit more about Montepulciano next week, go into a little more detail here. One of the things that I think it's important to point out is just that versatility. You can produce these very easy drinking, very softly tannic wines, all the way up to very structured, full-bodied examples that warrant long aging. You can also produce sparkling wines with this grape variety. You can produce dry wines, sweet red wines, and of course that rosato that we've already mentioned. So again, just adding on to the versatility of the grape variety. And then looking at just how much is under vine. So within Italy, kind of second most planted red variety after Sangiovese. Okay. And one of the most productive DOCs in Italy for red wines. And as we mentioned before, that province of Chieti really focusing in on the Montepulciano d'Abruzzo.
And now, a word from our sponsor. Did you know that Dracaena Wines has a wine club? We named it the Chalk Club. Draco is on our label, but Vegas was getting a bit jealous, so we decided he deserved to be our wine club spokesdog. In Las Vegas, betting chalk means that you are betting on all of the favorites, and we're gambling that once you taste our wines, we will become one of your favorite wineries. The club is simple yet a bit different than most. We don't ask for a lot of commitment like others do. Choose between 3 tiers, the Sweet 16, where you will receive 3 bottles twice a year and get 15% off all orders. Sign up for the Elite 8 and get 20% off all orders and receive 4 bottles twice a year, or make it to the Final 4 and receive 6 bottles twice a year, as well as receiving 25% off purchases. All tiers receive discounted shipping, are customizable, and are eligible for unlimited referral bonuses. Add $15 to the bank for each person you refer. Head to www.dracaenawines.com to use the link in the show notes to find out all the Chalk Club has to offer and to sign up. We've stocked the odds so that you can get our award-winning wines without breaking the bank.
Just a couple things about serving Montepulciano. Talk a little bit more about the organolactic characteristics of Montepulciano d'Abruzzo when we meet again next week. And I think I will also talk about food pairing a little more there as well, because I'd like to get the opinions of the producers and the consortium about what they really feel makes a good pairing for Montepulciano d'Abruzzo. And I think it's really hard to maybe focus in on one thing, because we are talking about a grape that can give you so much versatility in terms of styles of wine. Encourage all of you to, if you're joining next week, to try and get your hands on a bottle of Montepulciano d'Abruzzo at least, because I'm going to try and taste a Montepulciano d'Abruzzo, a Pecorino, and a Trebbiano next week. And if I can, a Ceresuolo, if I can find one in my market right now. So at least if everybody could try and taste a Montepulciano d'Abruzzo before then we can kind of go through this little chart here a little bit and discuss what we all found in terms of the structure and the bouquet and what we tasted in these wines next week. If you do have any questions I will look at the Q&A box right now, but if you do have any questions that you kind of think of throughout the week and before the next class, for sure, just send me an email and I will do my best to answer that for you. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing here if I can. In terms of the best examples of Abruzzi producers, you know what? I'm the first to say that I unfortunately haven't had the chance of tasting a huge variety of wines from Abruzzo, just because in my Winnipeg market, it's fairly not particularly well represented yet. Those two producers are definitely Rosa is asking the effect of such a large preserved natural area. I think I maybe touched on that a little bit through the presentation, but just I think that diversity really helps in terms of making the vines less susceptible to disease pressure for sure. If you have more diversity, you tend to have more natural predators and that sort of thing that can really help keep the vineyard area much more healthy. Okay. Yes, I can see some people putting in Medio Pepe, Mascherelli in there, some iconic producers. So if you have a producer that you really like, that you've tried the wines, add those in the chat box, because I think people would really be appreciative of that. So millions of hectoliters of red wine, presumably most of it simple wines. So yes, I think there are a lot of very, let's call them easy drinking wines being made, but those wines are still very, very important to the economy of Abruzzo, to the economy of the Vigneron. And as I mentioned, yes, there are more and more sort of very top quality, high quality examples being produced, but those kind of simple everyday wines really are still incredibly important to the industry. Is the Consorzio the group trying to prevent Provence from using a Vermentino name? So that would be, that's Jeannie asking that. Good question, Jeannie. It would be a similar, so it would be a Consorzio from a different area within Italy. Okay, so it could be perhaps a consortium from Sardinia that is trying to prevent Provence from using the Vermentino name and making them stick to the names that they have there. But it's a similar organization, and most wine regions within Italy have their own kind of consortium that looks after protecting their own area, if that makes sense. Okay. I read somewhere that downy mildew was quite a problem this year. So yes, downy mildew was a huge problem in Abruzzo. So peronospora is the other name for that disease. And I think this year was kind of an anomaly in many ways based on past years. Hopefully it's not something that we're going to see continue. So what happened this year was that there was a lot of rain between sort of April and June. And what that did, it created a lot of disease pressure in the vineyards. And that was complicated by the fact, especially in areas like Abruzzo, where you have this very hilly terrain. So you can imagine you have these hills, you have this clay soil, you have all this rainfall, which means that it's almost impossible. It's not safe in a lot of instances to take your tractors into those vineyards. So it was very, very difficult to spray, even the organic sprays with the conditions. And so a lot of vineyards lost a lot of their production because of downy mildew. So cross our fingers, that's not something that is going to become a pattern. What is the average vineyard size? It is a lot of small growers or larger. Good question for that. I would think it's probably quite small in terms of the average vineyard size, because you have so many growers. It's probably somewhere around 2.5 hectares or something like that. But I will definitely look at that for next week and come back to you with an answer, Sunita. Cordon training used to facilitate machine harvesting. Yes, you can definitely do a lot more mechanical process when you have cordon training. And does pergola training hold promise for more complex wine? I think either of them can produce more complex wines. It's a combination of things, not just the training system themselves. Okay. So Ceresole d'Abruzzo it's a DOC, okay, and it is only Rosato wines, okay. So yeah, don't confuse it maybe with. I think I saw somebody was mentioning confusing it with Ceresole di Vittoria, which is in Sicily. So that's a red wine. Here we're talking an appellation just for those Rosato wines. I believe the DOC wines didn't used to have to be bottled in the region, leading to questions over quality. Is this still the case? So it is an issue in some areas that you could bottle things outside of the region of origin. So it is something that the consortium is always working to tighten up because definitely when things are bottled in the region of origin, you have much more control over the quality of the wines. Why is there a trend towards I think not so much a trend towards reducing the number of DOCs, but a trend to reduce the number of IGTs. So, and kind of create those subzones, because the IGTs are quite broad and it's really hard to focus on wines of terroir when you have these broad IGTs. When you start creating the DOCs and then kind of zooming in onto even more specific areas with the subzones, then you're able to link the wines that you produce much easier with the territory that they're coming from. So when I hear Pecorino, I usually think of the cheese of the same name. So yes, the sheep and the cheese is called Pecorino, and so is the grape variety. There's some kind of legends that say that when the shepherds were moving their flocks from one point to the other, these grape varieties that we now call Pecorino would be ripe, and the sheep would munch away at them as they moved through the vineyard areas. And in sort of compensation for the grapes that the sheep would eat, the shepherd would give the owner of the vineyards some compensation in terms in the form of cheese, Pecorino cheese. So that's one of the ideas about where the name came from. There was a question about whites versus reds, and about 60% of the vineyard area is devoted to red grapes and 40% about to white. So that was the latest or the last information I had from the last census. So I'm hoping that the new census will be out soon, but I will double check and see if I can find any more up-to-date percentages for you there. American consumers are very used to having Pinot Grigio as a white wine from Italy. Is that grape growing in Abruzzo at all? I mean, it probably is growing in Abruzzo because everyone grows Pinot Grigio now. But honestly, I think Pecorino and Passerina both have the capacity to kind of fulfill that same sort of profile for a white wine, and even be a little more interesting than most Pinot Grigio for a very reasonable price point. So it's certainly worth checking out. I wouldn't say Abruzzo is known for its Pinot Grigio. Let's put it that way. Okay, I think I've talked about the cheese. Am I wrong to assume there's lower acid in Montepulciano than other red grapes, such as a Cab? I mean, Cabernet Sauvignon is quite high in acidity, so it might be lower than Cabernet Sauvignon or Sangiovese, but I wouldn't consider it a low acid red grape variety. It's kind of in that medium plus sort of category. Okay. Do you have recommended wines to suggest to buy? I really love the wines of Tiberio. I love Valentini when I can get my hands on it, and Medio Pepe. Those are some of the ones that I am kind of frequently trying. But so Susan's saying she can definitely find Montepulciano d'Abruzzo in the local wine shops easier than the white grape varieties. I would concur. It's just, it's a region that has really been known for the exports of the red wines, the Montepulciano d'Abruzzo, and the white wines are less or more recent in terms of being exported more frequently. So hopefully we see that start to kind of, even out a little bit in terms of accessibility for those various wines. But probably in most markets, yes, you're probably going to find more examples of the reds than you are the whites. How much of the region is hand harvested? I'm going to write this down because that's a great question. I will see if I can find any reliable information on that. I think we can say if you think that 80% is kind of still at that pergola, then that's telling you that a lot of will still be hand harvested because you aren't going to be able to machine harvest those pergola vineyards. But I'll see if I can find some more information on that. There are a few DOCs added in 2011. Yes, the Ortana one, I'm not sure why they chose not to mention it, but it is definitely a DOC that was added. So it is within the chapter that you received. So definitely worth familiarizing yourself with. And that percentage breakdown, I'll see, Tom, as I mentioned, I'll see if I can find more percentages out for you. Some late harvested grapes. So kind of maybe a little appassimento sort of thing going on. So really interesting. Okay. So I'll definitely look into those a little bit more. What is the logic behind elevation of those DOCs to DOCGs? I think it's just again, this is just my idea, but when the wine regions feel that they have sort of had a history, the DOCs have had a history, they've kind of proven themselves in terms of quality, they want that recognition that they too deserve these top quality regions, such as you would find in other Italian regions, right? So they want to show that Abruzzo is capable of producing these DOCG quality level wines, and these two appellations were the most logical in terms of being the ones that were going to be elevated. So yes, this bottling outside of Abruzzo, I think that's definitely something that the consortio is probably always mindful of. It is a difficult reality to grapple with, because a lot of the big producers that contribute significantly to wine production and to the economy are bottling outside of the region. And so it's always, that kind of push and pull between economy, economics, and, what you can do in terms of regulations and rules and that sort of thing. But I think it is something that is front of mind and something that they're always working towards. Okay. All right. I think I've answered all of the questions in the box there, in the Q&A box. But as I mentioned, I've written a few notes for next week to see if I can find a few more specifics on some of those percentages. As I mentioned, I'm going to try and get my hands on some wines from Abruzzo so that I can taste them while I'm talking with the producers or the consortio, whoever's going to be joining me next week. And I'd love it if some of you have something to sip along with me with. Okay, so thank you so much for joining me. I know that was a long presentation, and I really appreciate you hanging in there. And I look forward to seeing you next week and learning more about Abruzzo and its beautiful wines. Thank you so much.
Even in the Bible, water goes.
This has been another episode of Exploring the Wine Glass. Thanks for listening. If you have suggestions on what topics you would like me to discuss, please reach out on social media. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook as Exploring the Wine Glass. I am also on LinkedIn as Lori Hoyt-Budd. Of course, you can always email me at exploringthewineglass@gmail.com and sign up for my newsletter at exploringthewineglass.com. If you enjoyed what you heard, please rate, review, and subscribe to help others find me more easily. And most importantly, tell your wine-loving friends, because if you like the podcast, they will too. Podcast music is Wine by Kevins. Until next week, sláinte.
I want a nice glass right now. I'm on TV for my 10,000 tell you. There is always time for a good glass of wine. No. Oh, no. Never let you go. No. Never let you go. I want a nice glass right now.